I'm Sawyer, and you're listening to Our House, A to Z.
All right, we're here today with Frank and Bev, and Frank Tate is already making fun of my studio, which is, or no, it's actually Ashley that's making fun of the studio. So I just
it's just an air quote studio. It's an air quote.
It's an studio.
It's a 21st century studio.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a very cool studio.
No, it is. It is, but it's
gets the job done.
Yeah, it's where
With some extra light bulbs.
It's where we make. It's where the sausage is made.
Right.
Sounds
appealing.
It's a mess back here. There's stuff everywhere. But welcome to our house.
Welcome to our house, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Another Friday, and it's summertime. Kids are out of school. We are living our best lives. So we're excited to have Frank and Bev with us today. They're going to share a little bit about their hearts, their story, and then something really exciting that they have going on that we were really passionate about sharing with our church family and then also our house family. So we're excited about today.
Yeah, and if you were here on Sunday, then you did hear a little bit from Frank. And it was a really bizarre connection of how this all happened. And I got an email invite to a phone conference or like a Zoom thing or something. Yeah. And it was a Zoom thing. Yeah. But I called in because I couldn't figure out how to get the Zoom to work. Right. And because
that sounds right, because I wasn't there.
Yeah, that's right. And then I need you, babe, in my life.
That explains the studio.
Exactly. And so I'm like, you know what? I should call into this. And I called into the last 15 minutes of it as somebody was getting off, and it was just Chris, I think, and you guys and myself. And I'm like, oh man, these people are so cool. And it's rare. Like, you don't come across a lot of cool people in our circles, in our world. And I'm like, all right, we need to do this. We need to do this. Yeah, I know, Ben. You may have to take care of us there. His name's Ben. So we have an ongoing talk with Ben about places we need.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
But anyway, so that kind of led us to you guys coming out to a staff meeting, and then us going out to lunch, and then you guys coming here on a Sunday morning and sharing with our church your heart. And so we do want to go a little bit deeper, and I want to ask you, wherever you feel comfortable, start your story. Yeah,
I talked a lot already.
You're right. Bev, you
You're
go.
on the podcast. This is new.
Ladies first. Let's do it new.
Yeah.
Gosh, my heart. Where have I started? From the time I was little, just talking to Jesus, right? What do you want me to do? And how do I help? Yeah. And going through lots of trauma, lots of hard things over my life, and at times wondering, are you there?
Yeah.
But always brought me joy to help people and see other people smile. I didn't need to be in the front. I liked watching other people find each other. I grew up with a really great family. I'm very fortunate, very, very blessed, and we have a lot of good times together, a lot of laughter, play a lot of games, and what that in my older age now, when I look back, it's a beautiful community. Yeah. And hence that's gone into probably all my work, and everything I did, no matter what I did, brought community. And Frank helped me see that. Frank helped me see that was actually a gift from God. I didn't know. I spent my whole time, people say, oh, what do you do? I said, I have no clue. I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up.
I don't know what I do.
Yeah. And I'm still 60 and saying that, But he helped me see that was the gift, that I built community. That's where the joy is.
Good. Now, where did you grow up? Like, where are you from?
I grew up in a small little rural town probably about an hour outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And then moved to Chester County with my family. And it's a beautiful county, a beautiful part of Pennsylvania, but don't like the cold. So 2 years ago, I moved to Hawaii, and it's perfect weather.
Where in Hawaii are you?
The Big Island.
On Big Island,
Kona.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what you just described around here, we call that the gift of gather. And there are people in our church, and we call them gatherers. And it's people who are literally, it's like an anointing. There's a grace on you, and it's easy. And I see it. It's like, we've talked about that.
Love people well,
Yeah, you love people well, and they come to you for no reason. Other than that, it's just on you. So it's really special. A community builder is really special.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And, I didn't realize it all the time. There were times where I was like, why do people keep coming to me? I don't know what I'm saying and helping them. But it's more watching the magic. Yeah. Our family, I owe that all to my family and to God, right? But they taught us love. Yeah. People would come to our family gatherings and be like, wow, very similar to your church, what we experienced this today. That's why as soon as you walk in and you see the love and the welcoming, it's beautiful. It's magic what's happening here. So kudos to you guys.
It's good.
And
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're very encouraging too, and people love that. People are drawn. They're like, "Oh, somebody's going to encourage me, speak life over me. It's great."
Yeah.
It's fun. It's
a
our
great
favorite
gift.
things to do.
Yeah.
We
love
have
that.
the three of us have a text thread, and you're texting like so much encouragement, and I'm like, I feel like yes, like I can take on the world this morning.
receive
Thank
this.
you,
That's
Bev.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. But yeah, some people, it's like again, it's that encouragement, and that's what draws people, and they're like, wait a minute. Like, I'm not dwelling on what I was. I'm dwelling on whatever it is that you're encouraging about me. And so I think that's really powerful and very understated today. So it's cool that you are a part of this because of, and we're not going to get ahead of ourselves, but because of this heart that is beating in the chest of this new thing called Soulfest. That is not a new thing, but it is being reborn. That heartbeat is something very different, and I think you actually are a bigger part of that than you think.
Thank you.
Much bigger part. Yeah.
Over to you, Frank.
What's the question again? Oh, what's our, where it's
Just a
from?
little bit of your story.
yeah.
Some background.
I guess the most pivotal part was that the way I met Jesus was on the hardest night of my entire life. At 8 years old, I had already been in an orphanage and then went back and lived with my mom for a season. And then she dropped me off at my babysitter's and said she'd be back in 2 weeks, and she didn't come back. And so I spent 4 months, looking out the window waiting for her to come back, and found out on Christmas Eve she wasn't. So, just thinking I'd have to go back to the orphanage. This is the hardest day of my life. And I called her Grandma. She's just my babysitter. But I said, Grandma, this isn't fair. Why don't I get a dad? And without even blinking, she just said, oh, it's okay, honey. Jesus can be your dad. And at 8 years old, it stuck. And I just thought, okay, I'll have Jesus be my dad. And so my first prayer was, invisible Jesus, I don't know what dads do. I hope you're not going to hit me. I hope, that you'll buy food. But if you could teach me to be the dad I didn't get to have, that would be awesome. So since December 24th, 1974, my constant prayer to invisible Jesus is, how do you be the dad that I didn't get to have? And it's so wonderful. Like, I think it's way harder to have a bad dad or no dad than an invisible dad. And so I just loved it. Then 2 years later at church, the pastor was talking about Proverbs, and he talked about Lady Wisdom cries out from the street corner. She makes her voice heard in the city gate. So I went home from church, hopped on my bike, went to the street corner. There was no one there. So I thought, it's Sunday, that's why. And so on Monday morning, rode my bike to the mall, and I just sat in the food court for like 4 hours, just trying to hear Lady Wisdom and just, looking and, they're in a fight. Oh, they're in love. Oh, they have big bells. Oh, and just trying to pay attention to it. So my friendship with Christ and Lady Wisdom is really childlike, in the sense that I really do think he's my dad. I really, and the best dad ever. So it's interesting where I'm at now, because my kids are grown and flown. They're out of the house, and I think, well, my dream is to be the dad I didn't get to have. So to be able to now do that for a bigger audience, because there's a whole lot of people that need a father figure right now.
Amen.
Yeah.
And I know firsthand Jesus is the ultimate father figure. So it's fun to be able to point him to that. And because the beautiful thing about invisible Jesus, he knows us so well, and he celebrates who we are, instead of, sadly, sometimes we get guilted into who we're not.
Yeah.
And so it's really been a fun journey
Big time.
to live with that theology.
So cool. So flashing forward, now you're growing up as a believer, and somehow you end up in the industry.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, because your relationship with Christian music, it's not just like, hey, I bought a zoo.
Yeah.
It's like
Right, exactly. Kind of, though. It is kind of. I mean, because so after university, because I had to be a grown-up when I was a kid. Okay. So I put myself through private school, and I had 6 employees in high school, and had a blast. But so after college, it's funny. I went to college on an academic scholarship and lost it the first semester because you had to keep a 3.85. So I started throwing dances to put myself through school.
Nice.
And that was my introduction to the music business.
That's cool.
And it was interesting because I noticed at most dances, the guys would just hug the wall. They didn't know how to dance, and so I would just play the hits, and so everyone could sing along. Like I'd play "You Spin Me Right Round, Baby, Right Round" 3 times.
yeah.
All the guys could dance to that.
Come on.
So that was really my introduction to the joy of watching people have fun, and when I learned, how much I enjoy that. So after school, I traveled for 3 years and had a great job. I was teaching scuba diving in Sydney, Australia, and having a blast. And I'll never forget being on the balcony of this beach house, and it was so weird because in California the sun sets on the water. And in Australia, in Sydney, it sets, over the land. And so I was freaking out looking at the water, like, where's the sun? And I was just like, okay, Lord, I'm ready to go back and serve you. So I went back to California and opened a dance club because dancing was super popular at the time, and did a Christian dance club and, really trying to help kids learn about a friendship with Christ. And then right after I did that, Nirvana came out with Nevermind. And like within 3 weeks, dancing was stupid and everybody's wearing flannels and, listening to grunge. And so we just switched it over to live music. Had no idea what I was doing. I mean,
wow.
Think your office or your studio. My first light board was a power strip. I just going on and off with the power strip and these single. I'll never forget we did a show at the Prayer Chain and I accidentally turned all the lights off and the guitar player's like, turn on the lights.
That's awesome.
So it was just so funny. Beep. Sorry about that. That's what he said. And then that band, the Prayer Chain, asked me to manage them, and I had no idea what it meant. So I thought, well, I don't know what that means, but I'm sure we can figure it out. And they were a Christian alternative band back when that was not allowed.
Right.
And I was working at MTV at the time, so I knew that we weren't going to play it at MTV. I knew the church wasn't ready for it, so we'd have to kind of forge our own way.
Yeah.
So my first tour, you'll love this as a former tour guy, I just would call, like if it was, in this area, just call the area code 555-1212 and ask the operator, do you guys have a vineyard or a Calvary Chapel? And then I'd call and ask for the youth pastor and said, hey, if we bring a sound system in a band, can we play? And
get out.
So that was...
Before there was Google.
Yeah.
So cool.
Before MapQuest and all that. That was the hardest part was that. So,
Yep.
But I knew that was the voice and vernacular of kids that wanted to hear the gospel, that weren't ready for the Bible, but they would listen to the alternative music.
Yep.
And then it was always so obvious to me that you could love people into the kingdom more than judge them into the kingdom.
Come on, bro.
And so our shows, like with 5 Hour and Frenzy, we would always, our writer was, hey, can you get us the 6 funniest guys you know for load in? And then after each show, we'd say, hey, as soon as we're done loading out, we're going to be at Denny's on 6th Avenue. Come and join us. And, have 100 kids show up to Denny's, and it was a blast.
Dude, I'm having flashback heartburn from all the Denny's I ate.
Exactly, all the moons over my hammy. That was mine every night. Every night. So,
that is nuts, dude.
Every night.
Oh, my gosh.
Moons over my hammy. Zach talks about it all the time.
Oh, really?
So great.
That's so nuts,
so
dude.
That was my
And if there
go-to.
wasn't a Denny's, it was Waffle House.
I was just going to say how about Waffle House.
And I've seen some stuff at some Waffle
Oh,
Houses.
man, yeah.
We should probably have another podcast for that.
Yeah, just on that. Yeah, the Waffle House.
I saw 2 waitresses get in like a hair ripping out
Oh, man.
At a
like
Waffle
on the
House.
floor right behind where the booths.
Oh, my
the
gosh.
kitchen.
That's crazy.
And then there was a
memorable.
Before
one-armed-
phones, right? You could have got
Yeah.
that could have gone
I know,
viral,
yeah,
man.
yeah, for
So-
sure.
Yeah.
You see some stuff. But anyway, so back to Denny's.
So the fun part of the Christian music, because I really don't love music. I mean, I love helping people hear the hope of the gospel.
Yeah.
And so I learned to love music, but it wasn't, I didn't grow up, I only played the calculator. That's my only instrument. And,
Yep.
but I knew that the bands, but the bands didn't know business. That art and commerce are rarely given to the same person.
Right.
And so I understood commerce and I respected the art. And so I would ask the bands, how to, unlike most record companies, I want to know how to serve them. What does success look like for you? And then we would work backwards from that. So I'd tell them, like, if they wanted to play arenas, I'd say, all right, that's 150 shows a year for a couple of years and radio hits and 5 a.m. radio calls. And, so just let them know what that journey actually meant.
Yeah.
But
That's so good, dude, because I remember being a band, being courted by labels and talking through with some guys who had been through and been jaded.
yeah.
And it's like, no, this is not just the dream.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's like, oh, we want to sign, we want to get signed, we want to get signed, we want to get signed. And it's like, I remember a guy coming along and saying, like, you want to think about it. He said, they own everything.
Right.
They own your songs, they own your guitars, they own the shirt on your back, they own the bus, they own the everything. And the second it's not making them money, they pull
Good job,
it.
yeah.
And we saw some guys get like really wounded that way.
Right.
But I think it's cool, like, to have an advocate that understands the industry, and that's probably what a lot of Christian bands, in that era, they didn't have a guy like you who's saying, no, wisen up to this. This is what it really looks like.
Yeah.
It looks like beer and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for,
Exactly, for a long time.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner
Yeah.
for a long time.
Well, you'll love this. The way that made the 5-minute walk contract is I got 7 contracts from other record labels, and I told my lawyer, pick out all the kindest, wisest, most win-win stuff from this, and that'll be our contract. And so we only had 1 contract. Super win-win. I'd tell the bands that the highest risk is on me for the first 15,000 units. So I can pay you this much on 15. As soon as we get 15, you hit another point. As soon as you get to 30, you get another point. At 50, you got another point, and at 100. So the bands, and then the next record started where the last one left off.
Nice.
So it was so much more win-win because the record companies make the most money by signing a band young and tying them into 5 records on that deal. And it's just not, fair. And so, and we were the sound company, the light company, the bus company, booking and management. So I could take 5 hits financially before the band had to take any.
Wow.
And so if a promoter did his job and we just lost money, the band could still get paid because I could take, I'd be like, no problem, we won't charge this. But
it was
oftentimes,
built in.
yeah. And so it was so fun. Even my worst selling band still made money on the road, which is pretty unusual.
Nobody makes money on the road.
Yeah. And then when I shut it down, because when Napster happened, I knew we couldn't compete with free. I mean, it's a funny story how I learned about that. It was
Napster.
over. Yeah, but Five Iron was doing a live show at Cornerstone Festival with like 25,000 kids, and we were recording it. So I wanted to play a joke on the band. So while they were in the green room,
Of course.
I told everybody. I went out and made an announcement. Hey, we're recording this for the album, and so when the band comes out, I'm going to introduce them. I want everybody to boo as loud as you can. And so I'm like, let's practice. And
Thank God he has you, Bev.
and so the band comes out, and this was so fun. I didn't tell them about it, so I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Five Iron Frenzy, and the whole audience was like, boo, boo, and this
Oh my
one,
God.
we had a boom mic, and this one kid goes, you suck, and I tried to leave that as the downbeat of the album, but EMI is like, no way, you suck is still a bad word, you can't do it, but
That's
it
awesome.
was so much fun. But the reason I tell that is because at the merch line that night, 3 different kids came up to me with pirated CDs, and they said, hey, can you get the band to sign this? And they had no clue they were stealing from me.
Oh, my
they had
gosh.
I'm like, how'd you guys do this? They're like, oh, we bring our hard drives to our dorm room, and we copy them. It's so awesome. The blanks are only $1. And I was like, oh, that's great. And I got the band to sign them. And then I went home, and I was like, I'm done. I can't compete with free. And I wanted to be a dad, so that, my daughter had just been born. And so that's when I just I'm shutting it down and moving on. So.
Yeah. Now, did you guys know each other at that season?
No.
Okay, this is down the road.
Yeah. We met at of all things, a synthetic biology company. I was running the world's biggest synthetic biology events company, and which I met the guy who bought our house in California, ran it, and he knew nothing about business, and I knew nothing about science. Yeah. So I ended up running it for him and having a blast, and then Bev was our BD person.
Does that stand for biodiversity?
It does.
Exactly. Yeah. Or business development.
Oh, BD.
Yeah, BD. Yeah, sorry. Oh, business development. Yeah. So we had a blast working with a scientist, and that was so fun because there you have to earn the right to be heard. They don't believe in God, and so that was such a great opportunity to share the hope of the gospel in a really godless place.
Yeah. And servant leadership. You know, they learned that, which is just so fun when they call up and say, Frank and you would be so proud. This is what happened, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah, we got to really
it's fun.
Help a lot of people, so it's fun.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's there was probably 20 years between 5 Minute Walk and where we are now.
21, yeah.
21 years?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Just a guess. But I mean,
good.
Any other highlights in there that are that you want to say this is part of the path of I mean, I think you opened. What did you open? You did something
Super
else.
Frank's.
You've done a lot of really crazy
stuff.
stuff.
Super Frank. Yeah. I got dared to make something better than Chuck E. Cheese, and so I won the bet and lost my freedom. It was a funny story because we went to Chuck E. Cheese, and I hate that place. I mean, I'm sorry, Chuck E. I don't like it, but and so on the drive home, I was like, I was in a bad mood. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm in a bad mood, but I hate that place.
We joke about it like it's the place where every parent that's lost custody has visitation.
Yeah,
rights.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a petri dish.
That is not funny. That's terrible.
Sorry, that's not funny.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
but it is. That's just data. It is similar to that. So
that's just data.
Anyway, we were gonna open. I just want to meet with a realtor and see what does a 10,000 square foot box cost to lease to open. I was just going to put them out of business. And
is this in California? Or
in California, yeah. And the realtor, we went to the door, and the realtor's like, listen. I did some research. You have no restaurant experience. They have the highest failure rates. You don't know what you're doing, and you're just doing this to win a bet. I'm not even going to show you the building. And my competitor, I was just like, oh, it's on. It is on. And at this time, I'd been retired for 6 years, so I was kind of bored. Yeah. And so I ended up buying a racquetball club, a 34,000 foot racquetball club, having never made a pizza in my life. So So we
Listen,
became
Chuck E. Cheese pizza sucks too.
Yeah,
so
no,
it's
ours
like-
was amazing.
That,
Yeah.
you didn't have far to go to win that one.
Yeah, but ours was all organic. We had a Starbucks in it. The lobby it looked more like you were in a hotel lobby, because I knew that the audience, the kids are the easy part. The audience was the parents.
Yeah.
So we were, our motto was we want to be the safest, cleanest, funnest place for kids ages 7 and under. So we were the first restaurant that we had 21 Purell stations before that was a thing, and all organic food. And we had our clean team would be doing Lysol wipes on the joysticks constantly. Everything I hated about Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, that's great.
We did it, and so
I
I
like
won
the
the
sound of
bet,
that.
but for 2 years
Yes,
I had to work
exactly.
there. So that was and then as soon as it got, we had a guy called Super Tim that because it was called Super Franks, which was part of the Dare. And
Super Franks.
and so which everyone thought it was a hot dog joint, and like it was so funny. But as soon as he started running it, then that's when we moved to Costa Rica. I was just done.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I won the bet, and we ended up doing a little over 21,000 birthday parties in 9 years.
Amazing.
So-
What? Now, did you sell it from there, or did
That's
you
crazy.
guys
No,
just
I
close it down? You're just
sold
like,
the
"Hey, we're
building.
done."
My kids weren't having fun with it anymore.
Yeah.
They loved giving free tokens to their friends, so
Yeah.
they were like
Yeah.
heroes. And it was funny because you have these little kids coming up, Mr. Super Franks, can I have some free tokens? I'm like, oh yeah.
I know I'd go from rags to riches.
Are you gonna say no to that?
Yeah, so it was a fun during 9 years, and then we just sold it, and
That's a long time.
It is a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time.
It's a long time to do that.
yeah. I wish I would have kept the building longer because I thought we were at a peak in the Bay Area, and I didn't know that it had another whole nother step. But
Yeah.
but
And
yeah,
now it's probably like $1 billion
yeah,
building.
it was $1 billion. Yeah, 1 billion. So
$1 billion.
Dr.
A cool-
Evil
a
owns
cool
it now.
billion.
Yeah, exactly. So-
$1 billion.
Exactly. So it was fun. But again, even with that, it was how do you take the hope of the gospel into a pizza parlor?
Yeah.
And what we realized is we were selling adult friendship. That the moms were so stressed, so exhausted, that we had our staff that would take care of the kids so that they could talk. And it was such a wonderful opportunity because the work, this is the highlight of Super Franks for me, is about at least twice a month I would get a letter from some mom of one of the employees saying, thank you so much for providing a safe place for my daughter to work. And
Wow.
she loves work so much, I feel like I got my daughter back. And it was such a cool way to share the hope of the gospel through a traditional business,
Yeah.
just by having honor,
Right.
respect, thanking people, and and treating,
Loving others.
like we had a glow in the dark golf course there. And one day a family came in and they were so mean to they was older. They were so mean to my waitresses, and then they waited afterwards and followed them to their car and scared them really bad.
Oh no.
And when I heard about that, I was like, we're tearing that out. I don't want that anymore. That attracts older kids. So
Yeah.
we tore it out and got rid of it. And that mom couldn't believe, that we did that for her. I'm like, I have a daughter. I don't want anybody following my daughter to their car. And so we tore that out and made it for 7 and under. But it was fun. So,
Nice.
so it's been a fun journey.
That's very
Amazing man
cool.
of honor.
That's incredible. So that brings us up to why we're here, how we met, and that is that. And again, I'm going to pass it over to you guys because a lot of folks listening to this have at some point probably gone to a Soulfest in the past 27 years of Soulfests, and aside from the last two, I think they were at Gunstock in New Hampshire. And we've been to a few of them. I played with a band at a few of them, and it's been a cool thing. But it also feels, and maybe that's just this region, but in the sands of change, and as the landscape of Christianity and a healthy church has been shifting, we'd be almost foolish to think that the ethos of a Christian music festival shouldn't be changing too.
Right.
And I think that's kind of how things die, is when we don't say, wait, God's doing a new thing here.
Right.
How are we shifting and whatever. And so I want to ask you guys, again, so starting from Soulfest, or what led up to this.
So Dan Russell, who started it, has been one of my best friends for 30 years. He's like my big brother. We travel together, talk constantly, and over COVID, he had a stroke. He got so stressed, had a stroke, and so his business acumen really went down, quite a bit. So he kept doing Soulfest, but it had changed. Like when you were in music, that every year there was a couple new cool rock bands. I mean, it was the flavor of the month. It really it was a different thing. So the combination of him having a stroke, Christian music turning to more worship instead of rock and roll, Soulfest started getting smaller and smaller, and then especially leaving Gunstock. So last year, I just invited Bev to come socially because
This is my first year.
Yeah, it's her
Okay.
first year, and she had met Dan and his wife Cheryl.
Awesome. Awesome
Amazing
humans.
people. So
Awesome
so we were
humans.
just out here socially. And then on the Wednesday night before the fest, we were in the office, and he asked a couple questions of his team, and they didn't know the answers, and he just broke into a white sweat. I mean, we thought he was going to die right on the spot. His heart stopped for 6 seconds, and it was really scary. And
it was all stress related?
100% stress related.
Wow.
Yeah, because that was how he made his living. And at that point, it was obvious that he was going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars on the show, and it just hit him all at once. So we got him back to the hotel, and then the next day, it was just tough. He had an amazing team, wonderful people, but they were doing at a new location with only 5 months' notice. It was an impossible task.
Yeah.
And so he was just so stressed that I told Bev, I'm like, man, if we don't, we got to do something or he's going to die. And I was like, you want to buy it? And then,
I was like, it's not quite the community I was thinking
yeah,
at first, but yes, it's very cool.
Yeah, because we were trying to figure out,
Wow.
we were done with the science world.
Cool.
We really had in working with that, we were tired of that world. So we'd been thinking, who's the next community we want to help?
Wow.
And so when that came up, we had to make a fast decision. And so on the Friday, I'm like, it's now or never. Do you want to do it? And she said, all right. And
She was in.
Yeah. And so we told them, okay, we'll buy it from you. We'll take it over. And really didn't know what we were doing. I mean, so when we looked into normally when you buy a business, you do a whole, a whole analysis and,
Due diligence.
Yeah. Our due diligence was, man, I really love this guy. I hope he doesn't die.
We want to help Dan. That's all.
So that was so it was probably the dumbest way to do due diligence, but I love Dan so much. I mean, he is such an amazing. I've learned more about the soul and the love of God through Dan than anybody. Oh, and so it's been worth it just to see him healthy again.
Yeah.
But then as we started doing a deep dive, you would love him. Oh my gosh.
You
guys are the besties.
Okay.
He's amazing. But as we started doing a deep dive, we were like, wait a second, this, in business we say it's easier to sell an aspirin than a vitamin.
Okay.
And Soulfest has become a vitamin at best. It's like Christian.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, an aspirin is like you have a pain point and this is going to fix it. And so like when I had shoulder surgery, I was driving back from a show from LA and my shoulder was killing me. So I just pulled over to an AM/PM mini market. I didn't even look at the price. I bought 4 Advil. It ended up being $6 for 4 Advil, but I didn't care. My pain was so bad,
right,
and I still had 5 hours to go. So I started to feel better. A vitamin, they may or may not work, and so there's not as much demand for a vitamin as there is for for an Advil.
Sure.
So we started thinking, okay, what's the pain point for New England right now?
Interesting.
And the one that keeps coming to our mind is loneliness. As I told you the other day, the Surgeon General is now equating loneliness to doing the same damage as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Whoa. Just
which
stop
is
there.
mind-blowing.
I was accused of talking fast this morning.
Yeah.
You're talking pretty fast.
Yeah.
Which, again, feel free to, play this back at, 75% speed.
Right.
I just want you to say that again because that is like wild.
Yeah. So, it was a pandemic study of because productivity in America had gone down and they wanted to know why. And it turns out that loneliness is the mental duress of loneliness is now hurting you physically, where, so many diseases are stress related.
Yep.
And so, people, were isolated during the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, so many people lost their friend group. And so you've got now a whole generation that are digitally connected and socially isolated.
The anxious generation.
And the anxious generation. And so it broke our heart to think, that, if you think about the Surgeon General, this isn't like some church did a study with 18 people. This is the Surgeon General doing this and equating it to that drastic of a negative, physical impact. So that really, broke both of our hearts and we wanted to do something about it. So when we started, thinking, okay, what can we do with Soulfest? If the vitamin is going out to see the bands, then your ROI on the investment is going to be which bands do you have?
Correct.
And, are enough people coming out to see a show? When you're thinking, what pain point do I want to solve, especially in New England, it turns out that the Barna report, New England is the loneliest part of America. And we're now convinced it's because of your weather. And, coming from Hawaii to here.
I'm sure you are.
You guys in Seattle. Yeah. And,
so much.
it's like summertime and I'm in a jacket. But so we wanted to take that on and we wanted to think because this is an amazing statistic we learned also is that what would you say is the opposite of addiction? Do you know what the opposite of addiction is?
I would have said like sobriety or...
Yeah, it's community.
Okay.
Yeah, so addiction is the response to not having community, to not being seen or heard. So you're trying to anesthetize
And it's like
the
a
pain.
cycle, so it draws you further
Yes.
into
Yes.
Right.
isolation.
Isolation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're
Furthermore.
actually trying to anesthetize the pain of not being heard or seen or thinking nobody cares. Well, what a beautiful time for the church to be the community that everybody
Yes.
longs for. And so we thought that this is the best chance for the church. We believe everybody wants to live a great story. And so if we can make Soulfest an on-ramp to a great story,
Okay.
then that would be awesome. And so for the spiritually curious, it's also interesting that the youth are more spiritually curious now than they have been in a long time. But to get them to come into a church, that's a big ask. So we started thinking, what if Soulfest could become this wonderful on-ramp to hearing the gospel through friendship, through community, through
community.
connection. So we're just excited about the cornhole and the volleyball and you know, the different games. We're having a 4-square tournament and karaoke as we are about Josiah Queen and
Yeah.
Matt Maher and, you know.
With Paul Coleman,
Yeah, so we're doing live karaoke.
You need
So-
to be part of that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so but what we want is like what your church has. This is the most welcome I've felt at a church in a long time.
Absolutely.
Your guys and
It's
Kevin
amazing.
Whitaker's and
Yeah.
up in Biddeford, there's like 4
Justin
churches up
Sweeney,
here that are so amazing. But today, like 4 different people came and greeted me
Wow.
while I was just sitting there praying
Wow.
for what am I going to say,
Yeah.
and so kindly, not creepy, you know. 'Cause there's some creepy greeters.
There's some creepy people here. Too.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit it. You know?
Yeah, but it was so kind and welcoming.
They
And I
didn't
thought,
say
man,
hello.
if
It's okay.
anybody that didn't know Jesus experienced this, they would want to. That would be a great on ramp because
Yeah.
we're all longing to belong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that the message, you know, like we were saying today, you guys are considered the frozen chosen, but how cool that we get a chance to reach out to that. You know,
Yeah.
if they're dealing with loneliness and a friendship with Christ is the best, you know, solution to loneliness, and a community who's chasing the, you know, the extraordinary and inviting you into that is a wonderful thing. So,
Absolutely.
so we're trying to pivot Soulfest really, ideally to this more like what the best parts of church camp, you know, where you didn't
Yeah.
care who was speaking or who the worship was. You were going for softball and swimming and you know, and meeting girls, you know, and
Community,
meeting
yeah.
friends. If we can do that, where we can get the spiritually curious there, and then all of a sudden they're like, why is everybody so nice? Why do they seem to have joy? Wow, that's a really powerful song, and all of a sudden they want that.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
contagious, you know, where if we can love them into the kingdom,
Right.
that's what would be super fun. And
Yeah.
but it's a much heavier lift than just saying, you know, like if we would have had Forrest Frank, you know, we would have sold out just on the power of Forrest Frank.
Yeah.
Right.
But then that's people coming for a show.
I know.
Rather than a shared experience.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we're trying to pivot it into this wonderful on-ramp to I would invite anybody to your guys' church.
Yeah,
Like my litmus
absolutely.
test for every event I have is, would my softball team love it or think I'm in a cult? And I could have invited to your guys' church, no problem, unapologetically,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
even if I wasn't here, and they would have loved it because the authenticity was palpable. You know, the friendliness was insane, and the talent on the stage
the
was
stage
incredible,
was-
and
yeah.
and humor is that, you know, think about comedians are playing arenas now. How crazy is that? It's because we so long
We need
to
that.
laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, comedy shops used to be 200, 250 people packed.
Coffee shops on Friday nights.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and now they're doing arenas.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Sold out.
So it's a wonderful time. But we want to publicly thank you and invite anybody listening to come to the church
Yeah.
because this was a
amazing.
dose of hope that we desperately needed.
Absolutely.
Because
We're not paying them to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a
Well, we
drama
did get a
court.
seltzer. So
Yeah, we did get a selfie.
Yeah,
That's
so-
true. We did.
And I got my eye on one of those light bulbs too.
Yeah.
So
But help yourself.
Yeah.
The deal is that it's awesome. No, you know, and I love this, and I feel like there's so much here. And I don't want to keep you guys all day, even though I definitely could. But I want to say this. You know, I've heard you say this about an on-ramp a couple of times, and it's like my mind is like, you know, it goes to imagery. And I think there's a couple of things about an on-ramp, and one of the first ones is you have to slow down. And I think that so many of us are living out patterned lives that we can't figure out how to get out of because we're going 80 miles an hour,
Yes.
100 miles an hour.
Right.
I mean, we are. Like in ministry,
Yes.
Totally.
it's so easy to just be like, oh, get up, do it again, you know,
Right.
0 to, 80 and
Right.
however fast we can get it. And it's like we pull the car into the shop because we're going to break down otherwise.
Right.
Yes.
But like if we're like really trying to get people into this, the on-ramp, it's a place where you slow down. It's a place of transition where you're slowly coming out of one thing and into another.
Right.
And I think a lot of us, we, you know, Christians today, and I'll just say for the church, like I do a lot of apologizing on behalf of the church.
Right.
And that's part of, I think, my ministry is just to, repent for ways that pastors and spiritual leaders have wounded people and abused people. And just been overall beep to people. Thanks,
you,
Ben. She's got it. Ben's got it. But I think that there is this place of transition, and it's a gray area. And it's as religious Pharisees today, we don't understand the gray area. We have no appreciation for the gray area. Jesus walked in the gray area.
Right.
Yes.
His life was an on-ramp.
Yes.
The gospel story is an on-ramp, literally, where it's like, okay, you have to slow down. If you just try to whip a 90-degree turn
Right.
or whatever, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And people die trying to do that. But there's this way, there's this place. So the deceleration is huge. And I don't want to give any spoiler alerts for Soulfest, but I think hearing some of the visions and ideas that you guys have talked about and concerning social media and all this other stuff, I'm like, I love this. The second thing is signs. You're on any on-ramp, and there's signs. There's signs everywhere. There's signs on the left, signs on the right. There's signs for gas stations. There's signs for Waffle House. There's signs for Denny's.
Signs.
There's signs for, everything, including the road that you're going to get on. And I love that. And I actually can envision Soulfest and just, okay, the on-ramp may not be the mini mart, but it's going to show you where you can get that aspirin. It's going to be this, like, there's this directory of what it is that you're coming up to.
Yeah.
And you know what? There will be people who slow down, come up to the intersection, drive straight across, and go back on their way. Just like at church this morning. There are people who walk in the doors, come and worship with us for an hour, listen to a message, listen to whatever. Yeah. Maybe even come down to the altar and experience goosebumps and whatever. And they're going to cross over and get right back on the same road they were on.
Right.
Yes.
And it's not our job to try and jerk their wheel. Right. Our job is to be this place that says, hey, there's a better way.
Right.
There's a better life than the one you've been living.
Right.
And if you can cut to the left or to the right here and join us, that's the signs that we're putting up. And I feel like you guys have been that in just a little bit that I've heard you, and I'm excited about that.
Oh, thanks so much.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, we want people to know Jesus loves them right where they're at. He doesn't want to leave them where they're at, though.
Right.
And that if you're lonely, there's not a better community to plug into than a healthy church like this.
That's right.
That will help you. Because if Jesus said to love others as you love yourself, the church is a great place to figure out how you love yourself, and then who needs what you love doing. But I think so many people think, oh, if I'm a good Christian, I'm a pastor, or I lead worship, or I'm a deacon, or a usher, and I can't do any of that. And we want everybody to know, no, you can be a really good accountant, and and that's the gift that God entrusted to you. So we just want it to be fun. I mean, there aren't enough places to go have fun anymore. Like we used to. I mean, think about it. We used to have bowling leagues. I'd go to a friend's house on Thursday to watch Friends and Seinfeld. There were so many fun things to do.
So true.
And now it's so normal to go home and watch Netflix and order DoorDash.
Right.
And it's it's like isolation's become the norm when you miss the joy of sitting around talking story.
Yeah.
And so we're really so grateful for it. I mean, you guys have been a gift to us, because it has been
such a gift.
Like, oh man, should it have died? And should this is this vitamin need to go to vitamin hell or whatever? We didn't know what to do, but it's been so encouraging to see what you guys are doing up here and to serve, because like I said, there's so many really cool churches now that we want to plug people into.
Right.
And feel like it's easier to invite the spiritually curious to a music festival than to church.
Yeah. And I love one thing that we've noticed recently, we're seeing this crazy awakening of young adults and teenagers.
Yeah.
And they're so good at this.
Yeah.
They're so good at loving people well, like no matter where they are. And they're really good at inviting people to church.
Yes.
And we have, I mean, you don't see that in like the older generations, which is really interesting, but they are like, let's do this. Like people need Jesus and my friends at school need Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I'm
Absolutely.
excited, even if you guys take 2 seconds and just share like some of the specifics about Soulfest, like what, because I'm thinking about like even, like my kids' age, a lot of them haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
And so like this might be like a totally new thing to them.
Yeah.
What is it? What does it look like? What am I inviting my friends to?
Yeah.
Do we go and camp there? Like all
Yeah.
of those kind of things.
Yeah, what it had looked like in the past was nonstop music.
Yes.
4 different stages of nonstop music, and which was totally doable back in the 90s in the first part when there were that many, good bands.
Yeah.
And So now what it is going to look far more like is this wonderful, like kids, teenagers love coffee now. So we have 2 huge coffee houses where there'll be entertainment in there, but they can sit and talk story. And we're even having rocks that they can paint, have a cup of coffee and paint some rocks. And then have all sorts of spike ball and cornhole and volleyball and pickleball that you can have activities, but
like community-driven activities.
And with that, we'll have really fun people leading it. So no one, it's not just going to be like the jocks, and everyone else. It's like the whole goal is friendship making fun. And then the music that we have, we went for quality over quantity. Every band that's playing, we're super proud of. Like there's and that they have great art presented really well. That will, even if you don't like the kind of music, you will respect the kind of music. And so that'll be fun. And we have camping, and we're introducing a new thing this year too, because normally camping you have to have rainproof stuff and really good stuff. So we're
as you guys are experiencing now the need for that.
Oh my gosh, we didn't know that. And,
Exactly.
So we're going to do what's called tent within a tent, where they will have big circus tents that will be rain protection and sun protection, but then we'll just have cheap Amazon tents inside.
Okay.
So you can just come with just a sleeping bag and pillow, and you'll be set.
That is very cool.
Yeah, so that way,
so that's something very different.
Yeah, that way, and it'll be men and women. That's mostly for young people, and I don't know what the proper term for singles is anymore. They don't like to be called singles, but yeah. I don't.
And just young adults, and then have community spots in between where we're having pancake breakfast where you can just meet. We like to call it the strategic
So now,
serendipity.
when people buy tickets for Soulfest, because you used to just buy a ticket, and then you could have different experiences. Like you can go to the top of the mountain for these bands, and that was extra, and all that kind of stuff. Is it like a one ticket you can go online?
Yeah, so the website is thesoulfest.com. 2 tickets. One is called the Premium Experience, which is the pit area, and that has tents for shade and chairs, so you don't have to bring your own chair. And that's right next to the stage. That's the first. And then what is called Main Stage Meadow, which it's Soulfest's first year that it's in a gorgeous 7-acre meadow. So it's the first year we've ever had flat. Yep. So, and then we're having bigger screens, better production. So there's not a bad seat in the house, which is nice.
I do love the flat. We've been to Soulfest a handful of times.
Yeah.
Gunstock is beautiful.
Yeah.
But when it rains and you're at the bottom of a mountain, it's a wet experience.
This is nice and flat.
So we have nice, flat, beautiful grass. And then we'll have 3 huge tents at Main Stage, so that there'll be room for at least 3,000 people to be dry if it rains. Okay. Which will be.
And I thought you guys were also talking about like a naked mud pit, like Woodstock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We were doing I thought that's why I signed up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Hopefully we won't have much
You're
mud.
You're leading that, aren't you, Zach?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all over that.
Yeah, so this is every event Bev and I do, we think, okay, we're giving each other a high five at the end of the event. What are we celebrating? And so for Soulfest, what we want to be celebrating is that everybody there met 4 or 5 new friends that they're going to keep in touch with, and that they heard the hope of the gospel in a voice and vernacular that rang true to them. That they didn't just think, oh, these Christians are goofy, but it's like, wow, Jesus loved me where I'm at, and he gave me these gifts to give to others. Right. So really more, because last year you could have just gone with one person and sat and watched all the shows and not meet a single other person. Right. So we've been very, like Bev was saying, we call it the strategic serendipitous. Like we have a food court now where and we'll have funny people there just introducing people to each other. The volleyball will be super fun. And then Main Stage, we'll have hacky sacks there. We'll have, all sorts of stuff to do besides just the music. And then super fun people, talking from stage and stuff. It won't be just a bunch of it won't just be a bunch of announcements or people asking for, can you donate to this cause or that cause. And then we have a thing called the on-ramp tent, where we believe that true success, that Jesus said, is loving others as you love yourself. So a lot of people don't know how they love themselves. So in the on-ramp, like we were just talking to Kim about the foster program. So we want her to have a table there that people can go and find out what that's especially, close to me as a foster kid. I'm so excited to have them there, because that's a great on-ramp to, a story. And people who might not be aware of that, or Liberty University will be there, Gordon University. Gibson Go they've been the best sponsor we've ever had. They're amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're like
fundraising
it's a fundraising.
Okay.
It's almost like GoFundMe, but Christian.
Yep.
Lower fees. I mean, incredible
All the money
people.
goes to the people.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
and so they'll be there. And again, it's so weird how nice they are. Kind of
Yeah.
freaks. It's like you guys.
That's
it's like
cool.
they're being so
Yeah.
amazing, and they want to help people. Like you want to raise money for camp, or the
Yep.
tornado, or whatever. They're a beautiful, beautiful cause for that.
Wow.
And even little Greenfield, the people are so nice there. We can't believe the community that we've met there. So we want to showcase that.
Yeah.
We want to share that
Nice.
with
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah, so the audience for Soulfest, you don't have to be a music lover anymore.
Right.
If you're lonely for community or you're brilliant at creating community,
Mm-hmm.
we need you there.
Yeah, and I think the heart. I don't know if you guys talked about this while I was gone, but about the gifts that are in people. Did you cover that?
No.
The reason I just want you to do that, and this was something that when we hit it off, it was a lot around this conversation about the gifts that are within people, and helping people to kind of mine those things out of the ore
Right.
of their life.
Yeah.
And I think it's a process, and sometimes it's tough, but I see that on ramp too. Like if you're like me, a lot of our listeners are like me. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be listening to this anymore. But a lot of our listeners, you're like one of the two of us. But we're both Ashley and I are both kind of jaded on events.
Yeah.
Because so much of the church has like relegated its heaviest lifting to events.
Right.
Yes.
Like, oh, we don't need to be evangelists anymore because we have an event once a year that people are supposed to get saved at. Or
Right.
we don't need to operate in our spiritual gifts because we have a prophetic conference one weekend a year.
And often they're so self-serving.
Yeah.
They're so self-serving
Yeah.
and they're
Right.
so flash in the pan.
Totally.
And because they check a box, it's worse than not having anything.
Absolutely.
And so when I hear you talk about the on-ramp, I'm thinking on-ramps aren't supposed to go on forever. They're literally just
A ramp.
a connecting flight.
Right.
A bridge.
It's literally to get from one place to another, and the other place, the new place, is what's forever. And I think if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, is this to get like people saved? You talked about this gift thing, and we'll close out with this, but you talked about this gift thing like, hey, these things need to be awakened in people.
Yeah.
The idea that what God's given you matters.
Yeah.
The idea that the story God's already written for you is one that will actually change the world if you live it out.
Right.
And that his gifts are without repentance.
Yeah.
In other words, there's no amount of wrongdoing that you can do where he's pulled back on those things.
Right.
Or where he's been sorry that he gave them to you.
Right.
That's right.
And I think, to me, like, even if you've been saved for 30 years or more, it's very likely you're sleeping on gifts.
100%.
That you've got the money buried in the mayonnaise jar in the backyard instead of invested where it's supposed to go.
Right.
And to me, the on-ramp here, regardless of new people, unbelievers coming into the Lord, the on-ramp here is for people to start living a well-stewarded life.
Yeah.
That's right.
100%.
Back
to you.
So the real epiphany that I had was in that and I don't know if your listeners are Christian, but the parable of the sheep and the goats from, I don't even know, in Matthew or whatever it is, but it basically says at the end of time the Son of Man will separate humanity into the sheep and the goats. And to the sheep he says, thank you for visiting me in prison, thank you for feeding me when I was hungry, thank you for a cold cup of water when I was thirsty. And most of the commentary is, we have to take care of the poor, right? But the mind-blowing thing to Bev and I is that the sheep say, Lord, when did we do that? And you think about, if you're asking God, when did we do something that blessed you? It can only be that it was so natural for you, so organic, so just you being you using your gifts to serve others that you didn't even count it ministry. So it's me helping someone with business. It's you, like your jokes today were such a gift to us.
Such a gift.
You probably don't even remember it. When you said the lisp, I was dying.
Oh,
and
so
you
good.
probably don't even remember
Lisps
that.
are funny.
Yeah, it was,
I don't care
it's
who
super
you
funny.
are.
Yeah,
Lisps are
I
funny.
agree. But unless you have one, yeah. So yeah, but it. So what we want to on-ramp people is that just because it's easy for you doesn't mean it's easy for all.
Yeah.
Like if you think about Goodwill Hunting, when he solves the problem and the professor's telling him, you got to do this, it's such a gift. And he says, you have no idea how easy this is for me.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful truth. Or the story I told today about my daughter. She had no idea that getting a free bikini was a big deal. It was so easy for her.
Yeah.
And she still thought she was dumb because
Yeah.
she wasn't academically gifted. I think that's the curse. The definition of sin, the root of the word is to miss the mark. It's an archery term.
That's right.
And social media has us all missing the mark. It's not like, God entrusted, like for me, I love making ugly stuff pretty. That's my favorite thing to do. So, but if I wanted to be famous, I'd be missing the mark because I'm not making ugly pretty. Or if I wanted to be a singer, I'd be in big trouble. Or, so every day my prayer is, Lord, who needs a cold cup of water of what is easy for me, what I love doing? Who can I encourage that way? And so with Soulfest, what we want to, your gifts aren't going to change. Like I personally believe the parable of the talents is about DNA. That it's like, look, Zach, I entrusted a great voice. I entrusted character. I entrusted humor. You're a great orator. Are you going to use that to serve others?
Right.
And that to me is going to be the true success. I don't think he's going to say, Zach, I wanted you to build the world's greatest studio, and look what you did. so thank God. Yeah.
Oh man, that's close.
But that's the thing. If the church could celebrate the
I have built better studios than this one. I just want to go
There's
on
no
record.
judgment, babe.
yeah, it'd be tough to
This
build
is
a
a
worse
great
one. No, I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. But that's what we would love the on-ramp to be is, you mean it's a gift for me to do that? Especially, like I count my foster mother as the most successful human I've ever met because she loved praying and she loved reading the Bible. And she did that for 12 to 14 hours a day. By the Earth scoreboard, she was poor, frumpy, lived in a terrible house, nothing special on the Earth scoreboard. But if loving others as you love yourself, she was a rock star.
There it is.
She literally saved my life. So we want everyone to come to the Soulfest to take time to think, well, yeah, this is easy for me. Maybe I should, maybe that is my cold cup of water. Maybe I should try to do that more often.
Amen.
And so that's kind of the on-ramp. Well, hello.
Hello there. How are you?
So that
stowaway.
Yeah, that would be our goal, is that people come and that, because we all know, our I always say that, our screens, our mirrors, and our peers will remind us constantly what we're not good at. But if we'll listen to the still small voice, and God will say, but I entrusted this to you and I meant for you to give that away, what a cool thing, that the Soulfest weekend could be to help you quantify that. And that you don't leave there wishing you were something else. You leave there thinking, how cool that the God of the universe entrusted this gift into me for this time in history, and that I get to use it to serve others. That to me would be a fun weekend.
Amen. I think that's a great way to end it right there.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so
good.
everybody's going to join us. You're going to come out, visit what is the website? You said
Soulfest.com.
Soulfest.com.
Yeah, and it's in Greenfield now instead of Gunstock, which is
in Massachusetts.
And everyone
Greenfield,
thinks, we miss Gunstock. I miss it too. But when you're the thing at Gunstock is everybody's spread out.
Yeah.
So community was harder because some were at the lake, some were at the top. Here we have this wonderful meadow where you can, where else can you bump into wonderful, people that love Jesus to create friendships.
Yeah.
So it should be a blast. We're looking forward to it.
Cool.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and
And we'll see you
Thanks
next
for
week
having
here
us.
in our house.
Next week. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
So good.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is our house from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.
Well, isn't that special?
Lock the door. Am I in danger? Big summer blowout.